Hello, everyone. I wanted to do a quick video on this Blackest of Mondays to be able to help everybody to understand a little bit about what's going on economically. So, and it's going to seem like it's a little bit politicking here, but it really isn't. It's just the data, it's just the reality of what we're in the middle of right now. So, bear with me. In the last 3.5 years, there's been a concerted effort by government agencies under the Biden-Harris administration, which is really the Obama administration, but don't tell anyone, that economic data has been skewed mathematically. We have allowed over time changes in government to be able to manipulate numbers to be what we want them to be. Numbers will eventually catch up with you. They just do. You can manipulate them all you wish. But in reality, the end hits at some point in time. Just as you, who may make $40,000 a year, you can spend more. They will give you more credit. But eventually, your reality hits 4 or 5 years down the road when you owe $200,000 worth of debt. It's like, I'll never get this paid off. And then the train wreck rolls over you. That train behind me rolls over you, basically. And that's what we have right now. So we had a fundamental shift, just as we had back in the Clinton administration. We had a fundamental shift where when Bill Clinton was president, after Monica Lewinsky, he lost all of his power. So all of the good things that Clinton was doing as far as trying to balance the budget and things like that in his first term lost in the second term. And then Washington's spending got out of control in every other administration after that. It was all just spend, spend, spend. Then we had the 2008 economic meltdown, and that was, let's spend our way out of it. Oh, okay, great. Some infrastructure things came along. Some government spending. Okay, that's not a problem, as long as it's moderate government spending. And we were funding that spending with the Chinese economy, which we allowed the Chinese economy to come into its own. So the Chinese then agreed, when we allowed that to happen, to buy our debt. So the spending could continue forever. The thought was, but forever comes to an end. Our forever comes to an end at some point in time. So at the end of the day, we're seeing the unwinding of all of that. And it's ugly. It will be ugly. It'll be exceptionally ugly. It always is ugly when numbers come to an end. When reality has to come in. When we have to start buttoning up for a storm outside. It's raining outside right now on this Blackest of Mondays. So we are all supposed to live our lives to prepare for the storms of life, because they last. They last for a year or two, and then things get better. And then they last for a year or two, and things get better. And then they last for a year or two, and things get better. If we have debt, then it makes it harder and harder and harder for things to get better in our own life, because we are indebted to someone or something. A major institution, in essence, owns us. It's not a good thing. You want to be yourself. So try to avoid as much debt as humanly possible and try to bank on yourself with your own growth. So if I have a $500,000 paid off house, let's say, and I wanted to go buy a $40,000 car, I can just borrow against my house. I can fund myself. Then I just have to pay myself back. And I'm not paying myself back any more than whatever the interest rate is to go into my line of credit to buy that car, assuming that I need that car or that vehicle to create more revenue. So when we think about revenue creation and spending, we have to be cautious about our spending, and we have to create more revenue than we do spend. So if our cost of groceries goes from $200 a week to $400 a week, we have to cut spending someplace else because our cost in an inflationary environment has driven our cost of our groceries up. The only way that we can manage that cost is to make more money, do more side gigs. And almost everybody has a side gig, by the way. If you don't have a side gig, you better get a side gig. We have to recognize revenue wherever we can possibly recognize revenue at. When I stepped aside from Chrysler Corporation as a truck driver with them, I gave up $80,000 US of revenue. So I had to find $140,000 Canadian of revenue to fill in that gap. It's just the way it was. And I had to build towards it one day at a time. So now we find ourselves with a government that's in complete disarray. We find ourselves completely listless as the powers in Washington, D.C. are fighting themselves out. And we have administrators that are running things. And that's never a good thing in a free market. That is government control in a free market system. While we're bridging this gap until we have new leadership step in on January 20th. So because Joe Biden has lost power, it was always written, and I read a lot, it was always written that anybody that told Joe Biden something he did not want to hear was just shit on. How dare you give me this bad news? I only want good news. Period. End of discussion. Change the data sets. So we had numbers that weren't making any sense at all. And I'm a numbers guy. And there were article after article after article after article written by the press. The real press, not the fake press that's out there, but the real press saying these numbers don't make any sense. These numbers are just fictitious numbers that were created by somebody in an office someplace to please the president. Article after article after article every time they released data sets. Yet the market was like, woohoo, things are great. The Federal Reserve, based upon the data sets that the government agencies were creating, sat there and said, oh my gosh, if things are this great, we got to raise interest rates to cool this overblown economy, to stop this inflationary pressure, because this inflationary pressure will put pressure on everybody, and we got to control that. That's the one thing that the Federal Reserve is supposed to do. They're supposed to have as good of growth as possible economically without it damaging human beings, basically. That's a simple way to be able to put in terms what the Federal Reserve exists for. So the Federal Reserve was getting all of this fictitious government data and believing it to be the gospel truth while Joe Biden's been in office. So they raised interest rates to cool the economy, and the economy grew at 2.8% last quarter. That was a massive expansion of our economy. If you drive I-75, you will see semi-truck after semi-truck after semi-truck after semi-truck after semi-truck going someplace doing something. And yet, because the cost of operating those semi-trucks has soared, many trucking companies are filing bankruptcy. They don't have the same revenue to be able to meet the cost. So they're failing when we have all of this freight that needs to be moved across our economy. Again, not a good thing. That drives up pricing points as well too, because the cost of transportation is a massive cost in everything we buy. A car is trucked like 27 times, might be an exaggeration, I don't know the exact number, before it's even sold. Not the full car, but all the pieces of a car. That whole manufacturing process is trucked over and over from this building to that building to that building to that building, creating all these jobs. Good paying American jobs. Okay, great. So now we have a president who's lost power, has no power whatsoever. He's a lame duck for the last 6 months. He's a lame duck, has no power, has supposedly no mental capacity to even know what he's doing. So nobody has to report to him any longer. And they can just give him good news all day long while he drinks his Kool-Aid, I guess. I'm not sure. But now the government, it can start to give us the real data. And they did. The first jobs number, 114,000. Oh, we were expecting 270. What happened? Well, Joe Biden lost power. So now we can give you the real data. And they didn't say that, but that's what happened. And the real data was 114 because the private data versus the public data, the government data is public data. The private data was showing, oh my God, things are really bad. There's multiple households in the United States with 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. And we're seeing that across the board. When you look at all the data sets, Intel just announced that they're firing 15,000 people. Just like that, 15,000 people in these great Intel paying jobs. So that's what's happened. We're starting to realize the Japanese, their economy has just been on a flat line for many years. The Chinese have a massive problem in their country because after COVID, suddenly every American institution, every American business recognized all of its risk. Because risk had been, and I've written about this and talked about this until I'm blue in the face, but risk had been taken out of the mathematical equation starting about 1980. Just did. Businesses all started, oh, we're not going to factor in R in any mathematical model any longer because R is a variable and R is so difficult to understand. How do we even factor in an R? How do we even know that our risk is 3% on that? How do we know? And since we don't know, we shouldn't include that R in our mathematical model. So all businesses, all business schools got rid of R in the mathematical equation. When you got rid of R, then suddenly Ford, when it was looking at where to build a plant, said, oh, without R, it's okay to go ahead and build plants in land. And it's cheap there. It's only 2 cents an hour for people to work there. We'll make all kinds of money off of our cars. So they did build a massive multi-billion-dollar plant in Chugubugumala. And it worked for a while. But then COVID hit. And that has completely turned upside down our entire distribution facilities. And now we've got the Houthis and the Blowfish blowing up ships out in the shipping channels. And now suddenly we can't go that route anymore. We have to go the long way to China. We have to go the 33 extra day route, which costs that much more to be able to ship. And there's no easy solution for shipping some of this stuff. So the U.S. is at war with the Houthis, but the Houthis are actually being funded by Iran and Russia, a proxy war. Now, Israel just came in and blew the Houthis out of the water, or Israel came in and blew the Houthis out of the water, just literally. They came in, flew 1,000 miles, and blew up all of the oil facilities for the Houthis and said, well, there you go. Now you don't have any oil. Good luck. And you don't have any capacity to be able to get oil. Good luck. They blew up the largest port facility in Yemen. Just annihilated it. Because somebody had to do it. So we have all of this turmoil going on all over the place. We have a government that's actually starting to release the real data sets, and it's spiraling out of control. We have no president any longer for the next 6 months. There's nobody acting as president. Joe Biden does not have the mental capacity, and that's why he was removed. That's why Kamala was appointed. But then the other problem that we have is that we don't have anything with Kamala. She's a chameleon. She talks about, I grew up in your neighborhood. Yet she didn't. She grew up in one of the richest enclaves in Canada. The richest when she lived there. It was the richest enclave in all of Canada. She didn't even grow up in the United States. But she's, I from your neighborhoods. No. Her policies are complete open borders. Her policies are defund the police. Her policies are take your guns away and see what happens. And, so many millions of Americans will just pull the Democrat trigger. They will. Oh, I'm a Democrat. I vote for her because she's the party. And that's okay. But heaven forbid if we have 4 years of her, then it's blub, blub, gurgle, gurgle, all gone. And that's what this market is also adjusting to. When Donald Trump was beating Joe Biden in all the polling, the market was starting to rally strongly on the concept that, wait a second, some reality will come in, some savior will come into this and save us from what is coming on this path that we're on. But then as Kamala gets some strength behind her, as people start, she's the greatest thing since sliced bread, we just got to vote for her because if we don't, we're racist. And I don't want to be racist, so I got to go vote for her. I mean, I just have to. But you're sinking your country when you do that. So the stock market, its sell-off, its global sell-off is like, oh my God, there's not going to be anybody in the United States to be able to save this thing. It's all over because China is gone. There's nothing left in China. It was all a fictitious path in the first place. The data sets that the Chinese government were giving us was all just the same math that the United States is now doing. So yeah, it's all blub, blub, gurgle, gurgle, all gone because it was all fictitious in the first place. But what do we have that is staring at us in the face? That's a good point. What do we have that's a positive coming? Okay. Assuming that there is this global slowdown that the market is worrying about right now, then interest rates get cut. If interest rates get cut, then suddenly people who do have money, because Americans still have a lot of money, will then think about moving. maybe I should move across country for that better paying job. Maybe I should uproot my family and move them to Des Moines, Iowa, where that great job is. Now, you're not going to go to Caterpillar in Des Moines, Iowa, because those jobs are gone. Caterpillar, a month and a half ago, said we're closing all of our U.S. plants. We're moving everything to Mexico because they got rid of the R factor too. And also their cost of labor soared with their new labor contract. They gave in and gave the union everything, but then the cost of being able to provide that means that they're not making any money. So then they have no other choice but to move their production to someplace else. It was all baked into that whole union contract thingy. Everybody knew it. It was broadcast wide and clear. I wrote about it and talked about it on this channel. Made no sense. None of it makes any sense. So that's what's catching up with us right now. Now, if interest rates go down, which they have in Canada, by the way, then people will start moving again. People will start saying, hey, there's this better way over in Chugulagama. There's this plant opening up, and I'm going to go over there, and I got a job. And I got a job that's going to pay better than the job that I have here. So I'm going to move. I have this thing called freedom. I'm going to move. I'm going to go enjoy something over there because I'm here for a limited time. I'm only here for 80 years, and maybe only 10 years is going to be over there. But hey, I got to save up for my future. So as interest rates come down, that will free up the real estate side of this business. It'll free up the personal real estate side of this business. The commercial side of this business is blub, blub, gurgle, gurgle, all gone, which is the other problem that we have in our society right now. If you go to Toronto, pay attention. Look at night. Look through how many buildings you can see right through because there's nobody there. There's no walls anymore. They've taken everything out. You can see right through the buildings in Toronto. All you gotta do is pay attention. You can see right through some of the buildings in Detroit. They're building a brand new skyscraper in Detroit. Brand new skyscraper in Detroit. One of the richest guys in the globe is spending some money in Detroit. Dan. So all of this gets rebuilt now. We have a massive problem that we're working through right now too, and it's currently in the court system. In New York with the Donald Trump trial, when Judge Merchan ruled that appraisals mean nothing, that changed the entire economic landscape forever. And courts will fix that problem. It's just going to take time. It takes time for things to move through the courts. So the Trump verdict in New York is sending ramifications through the entire business model of how the United States operates. One judge, Judge Merchan, ruled that appraisals mean nothing. And using a business model that funds things on appraisals is wrong. That's what he ruled. It's very simple. You just have to interpret what he ruled. And we're seeing that problem now. So suddenly now, appraisals mean nothing. So if I have a $40 million building that is half vacant, how much is the building worth? We would assume 20 million. It's not necessarily true now that there's this court ruling. Maybe the building's only really in reality worth 10 million. And we can no longer use that appraisal from a smart, pointy-headed person who has all kinds of degrees and designations to be able to make that determination. We no longer can use that as a way to be able to determine the value of that building. The only valuation that we have for that building is what would it sell for today? Is there an offer today? That's the only valuation we have. And if we do not have an offer today or anybody that wants to buy that building, what is that building actually physically worth? Zero. because the cost of deconstructing that building and sending those pieces, the steel, the roofing, whatever, to some other place costs a lot of money. So the cost of doing that is just a cost factor. So if we can no longer use the assumptions of appraisals, a business that I used to do, if we can no longer use the assumptions of appraisals, the only thing that we can do to be able to figure out the value of a commercial building is what is the offer. So there was just an $800 million commercial building in LA that sold for 300, I think it was 300, I forget exactly what the numbers were, but a Chinese developer came in and said, "Oh, did building available for sale? I buy it." Now that's not a Chinese accent. You'll have to bear with me with that. But the Chinese came in and bought this great big skyscraper in LA for very, very cheap money. Oh, that's cheap. We'll buy that. So at the end of the day, that's where we're at. We have gone completely bonkers. We have put people in power. And I'll give you one example. There's an ADA in New York, Assistant District Attorney in New York, who was given the job of child endangerment. Hey, your job is to go out and prosecute those people who are endangering children. Oh, okay, great. This is good. I like this job. But then he was just caught because he was trying to have a date with a 13-year-old. That's how we've become. We now have the insane asylum running the insane asylum. And it makes no sense. When things make no sense, economies suffer. We have gotten way, way, way off track. And we're going to suffer for that economically. What can we do? We can only do what we can do for us. It's all that I'm doing. It's all that my friends are doing. A friend of mine has a business, and his business is senior citizens as well too. And his business is looking up. He's like, "Brian, geez, all of a sudden I've got people wanting things. I'm paying off debt fast. This is weird. My ship has come in after many years of pure hell. So he deserves it." And senior citizens are getting crushed, and they're realizing that, wait a second, I can buy this thing for $10, or I can buy this thing for $8. I'm going to go buy this thing for $8. And that's also what's driving my friend's business. He offers a little bit more. It's what I do in my business. I offer a little bit more. I'm going to go over and do some of that more here today. Do I want to? No. Do I have to? Yes. So that's what's going on right now. The only way that you can protect yourself, there's two things. The very first thing is that personal real estate, still massive demand. Interest rates are coming down, so Americans will start moving again. Canadians will start moving again. The Windsor market here has just been exceptionally strong. 73 houses again last week. Exceptionally strong. As more people are moving to the South Beach of Canada, which is Windsor. You cannot move any further south in Canada than Windsor. And people are coming here in droves. So at the end of the day, I do believe my company, Real, will be announcing its earnings pre-market on Wednesday. EXP, a competitor, a larger competitor, announced their earnings last week and they missed. their earnings. The CEO of EXP has been selling tens of thousands of shares almost every day. He used to sell 10,000 shares or 20,000 shares. He's now selling 40,000 shares. So he's speeded up his selling process rapidly. Because their smaller competitor called Real is on his heels. EXP grew internationally. They have 24 countries that they're in. And that has completely changed their entire business model. They can't possibly manage everything across all those channels. Real is just focusing on Canada and the United States. We've been adding, we're now over 20,000 advisors or realtors. And the realtors that we have are producing real estate sales. So I think, and this is just, I don't know, but I think earnings on Wednesday are going to be very good. I believe that we're going to hit our numbers. I believe that there's some things coming that are just awesome. And I believe that as the Federal Reserve starts cutting interest rates, that will give some Americans with some funds some ability to be able to do some different things, possibly make some changes in their housing, which means that they're going to need the services of a realtor, which means that going forward, real estate stocks should do pretty darn well, especially those that are involved in the personal house side of the business, not the commercial side. Commercial side is dead. But the risk is that this economy gets so bad that people massively start losing jobs, and then they have no other choice but to stay where they're at. Don't know how that's all going to play out. But that's also what the market's trying to do right now. It's trying to disseminate all this stuff. It's like, where did this come from? How come we're talking about the carry trade? The carry trade, by the way, was about a $1 trillion problem back when Obama was president. And because he never fixed it, it's now a $20 trillion problem. And the Chinese have no money to be able to loan against anything any longer. And that's why the carry trade is so important. It's a complete unwind of everything that we know. It's basically the failure of debt markets across the globe. It's basically the way to be able to think about it. Nobody has, and nobody can print $20 trillion to fix the problem. So here we are. It caught up with us. How do we fix it? Everybody has to work together to fix it. And nobody's working together right now at all, because we don't even have a government in the United States that can put anything together, because we no longer have a supreme leader until January 20th. And people are saying, oh my God, Kamala could win, and we got to sink this stock market because things are going to go pure hell if that's the case. Because she has no experience whatsoever. She's just been appointed. So that's where we're at today. The train is in the station now, and it is a train. And now people are like, oh my God, now we've got this problem. Well, we've always had this problem. It's just that we lost leadership. There's nobody leading right now. And so now governments can rapidly release the real data sets, make the market adjustments that need to be made, and try to get back on track from then, so they can destroy everything to try to rebuild it all. And that's what's happening today. The point that I make is the destruction is only at maybe 20% today. There's still about 80% of destruction that needs to happen to be able to get to a reset point. Somewhere is the right number. We're just not there yet. So we should see more. It's not going to maybe happen today, but we should see more downside risk. My only challenge was I've seen it. I did trade it short some, but I didn't trade it short long enough, because the market can turn positive at any point in time and run up 1,000 points. We've seen it over and over and over again. Don't know if that'll happen this time or not. So go on and enjoy this day. There's nothing we can do about it. You just have to make sure that you get your family in position for the rainstorm and the thunderstorm and the tornado that's coming. The tornado might be in your city. The tornado might be in your company. You better be ready for it. And that's what you were supposed to be doing when things were good. So many people went out and bought, oh, gee, hey, I qualified for $1 million house now. This is great. Just because you qualified for it did not mean that you needed to go buy it. But so many people went out and bought it, and they're getting crushed right now. Nothing we can do about that. It's sad. That's all that we can admit. So I have a client right now. I don't know that he even watches this channel. And he wants to buy the house next door. It would be, in my view, not a very good financial decision based upon where he's at right now. You can't borrow yourself into prosperity. You're just beholden to somebody else when you use their money. So stop it. Stop using other people's money. Start using your own money. Start building your own money. It needs to start today if you haven't done it yet. My opinion. Have a great day. If you have any questions about the Windsor real estate market, investing, you can give me a jingle. I'm available. 519-995-6145. This is Brian signing out. Have a great day. Bye-bye.